Nuestra siguiente presentación es de nuestra representada ERA con el tema Raising the Bar for Quality Management in Environmental Testing Labs. Nuestra ponente Nicole Cora, directora de Canales Internacionales para Latinoamérica. Gracias.
Hello and buenos dias to everyone. My name is Nicole Cotta. I work for Waters ERA, and I wanted to say thank you to the SYLABSA team for inviting me to speak today at their symposium. And I also want to say congratulations to the SYLABSA team on your incredible anniversary. That's quite a success, and I think your dedication to your customers is one of the main reasons for your many successful years in business. So today, Paula has asked me to speak a bit about how proficiency testing plays a key role in a laboratory's quality management program. So after a brief introduction to who ERA is and who we serve, I will talk about why do we do proficiency testing and use certified reference materials as QC checks. And then I will finish with some information about the recent changes to some of the ISO standards that are very important for the type of work that we do. So first, I'd like to introduce you to ERA if you do not know that much about us. We were founded in 1977 in the United States, in the state of Colorado. And it was during this time that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, made the decision to privatize proficiency testing. And so they looked for private companies to continue with the proficiency testing program they had started. Then in 2006, ERA was acquired by Waters Corporation. And now we have facilities in both the US, in the state of Colorado, in the mountains, and also in Wexford, Ireland. And ERA is a leading proficiency testing provider primarily to the environmental testing market, but also a little bit for the laboratories conducting food testing. We conduct over 50 scheduled proficiency testing studies every year in 8 different matrices. We have served over 13,000 laboratories around the world. We issue more than 14,000 proficiency testing reports every year, and we have over 600,000 data points that we analyze every single year. ERA also has a line of certified reference materials for the pharmaceutical market, specifically for total organic carbon testing and conductivity testing. But we will not talk about that topic very much today. And finally, I want to say that we have worked together with SYLABSA in Peru for over 10 years now. And it is, like I said, their professionalism, their expertise, and their dedication to their customers. And that's what makes this such a successful partnership between our two companies. So who do we serve with our proficiency testing and certified reference material products? We mainly serve testing laboratories who are conducting wastewater, drinking water, soil pollution, air pollution testing. We also serve some customers in the food and beverage testing market and also in the pharmaceutical market. Now, similar to you as a testing laboratory, to ERA, our quality accreditations are extremely important. We like to say that they are our license to do business. If we do not maintain our accreditation, we would not be able to make certified reference materials, and we would not be able to offer proficiency testing. So as you can see on this table, we have 5 main accreditations that are critical to the products that we make and the customers that we serve. ISO 9001 is a general quality management system standard. We are also accredited to ISO 17025. This specifies the general requirements for calibration and analytical testing laboratories. I know many of you are accredited to 17025 as well. Also for ERA, we are accredited to ISO 17034, and this is the ISO standard that details the requirements for a reference material producer. Then we have ISO 17043. This details the requirements for a proficiency testing provider. And finally, we are also accredited to a standard called TNI. This stands for the NELAC Institute. And this is a standard and a requirement for conducting proficiency testing in the United States. But for our conversation today, we will focus mainly on the ISO standards that I've listed here, and specifically 17025, 17034, and 17043. So when we talk about laboratory quality and how ERA can support those quality programs, I like to think about a quality program like a pyramid, like that I have on the right of the slide. So the bottom, or the foundation, is really your testing lab's standard operating procedures and your methods. Now, some ways that ERA supports you in your efforts is through some products that I've listed. And at the bottom are calibration standards. And these relate instrument performance to the concentration of what you are testing. Now, if you go one level up, we have certified reference materials. And these really confirm your process and your performance. And at the top of the pyramid is proficiency testing. And PT is really an independent third-party evaluation of your entire process, not just the analysis, but everything from when you receive your sample to the preparation of your sample, the analysis, and also how you submit results. A proficiency test will evaluate that whole process. So ERA offers many different proficiency tests and certified reference materials, or QC checks, and calibration standards. We also have a very robust custom standard program because we know different countries have different regulatory requirements. We have a powerful informatics tool called eData that not only is the reporting tool, but gives you a lot of analysis capability for evaluating your laboratory's performance. We offer a product called Quik Response, which is a proficiency test on demand, and I will talk about that in a little bit. And really, To us, the value of a standard is related to the level of its documentation and certification. And this is why our ISO standards and our certificates are so important to us, because we know they are important to you. So just to give you a drawing or an image of proficiency testing and what it is. Really, many times it starts with the requirements of a regulatory agency or a standard method and their accreditation requirements for your laboratory. So then we have our customers or the laboratories who must conduct or want to conduct a proficiency test. So they will place an order to SULABSA or to ERA eventually, and we will send a blind sample or an unknown concentration sample back to the laboratory. The laboratory will analyze that sample using their standard protocol and their standard method, and then submit results back to ERA via the eData software. Once the study has ended, we then calculate the results, the study mean from all the participants across the world. Once we have done that, we issue the report back to the customer, your laboratory, and in some cases we can send directly to the regulatory agency. Now, very often the laboratories are successful in their proficiency test. If they are not and they need to do corrective action or troubleshooting, ERA offers products and advice to help with that process, such as the Quik response, PT on demand, or QC certified reference materials for laboratories to check their process or to train their analysts. So there are a lot of ways that we help laboratories make sure they are successful in meeting their quality goals. We offer proficiency tests and certified reference materials in some different matrices, so wastewater, drinking water type samples, also source water. We offer soil and sludge matrices, and also samples in air or emissions categories. And the types of analyses and tests that we offer are organic analytes, inorganic analytes, microbiological, and radiochemical samples. Okay, so some interesting things about proficiency testing. Each time ERA manufactures a lot of material for a different study, it has a completely different formulation. So ERA always provides a range of concentration for the different analytes in that proficiency test, but we randomly choose that concentration every single time we conduct a study. So it is an unknown to you as the testing lab. Proficiency testing studies have a start and a stop date, and it is crucial that laboratories submit their PT results before the study ends. So let me talk about that for a couple minutes. Over the last year, there has been a lot of uncertainty with the COVID-19 and the pandemic. But during that time, ERA has not accepted late data. And that's because that is a requirement of ISO 17043. Proficiency testing providers cannot accept late data. So that's why we are very strict about that. So once a study ends, we collect all the data, we analyze the results, and we send out the PT reports. The PT report can only be sent after the study closes. So really, a proficiency test is a combination of the physical product to be tested and the report that arrives after the study has ended and ERA has analyzed all the results from the participants. Now, when you receive your sample and you analyze that sample using your standard protocol, you will enter your results and you will report your results using our eData PT informatics tool. And not only do you enter your results into this software, but this is also where you can access your report, and you can access a lot of different types of reports that ERA has already programmed to analyze trends over time of performance, or we have some algorithms that identify risk. So really, this is a powerful software tool that I encourage you to spend some time in. And then the other thing that you will receive is your proficiency testing report. So we do email this as a PDF document. We also make it accessible in eData's software tool. So here you can see this is a summary of an anonymous proficiency testing participant, where we have the different tests that they've completed, some basic information of the study range and the z-score, and whether or not the participant obtained a satisfactory result or an unsatisfactory result. As you go further into the proficiency testing report, you will find a lot more information and data. So here there's some really great information about the robust mean of the study, what was the assigned value, the certified value for the participant, what method did they report, number of data points, acceptable results, information like that. And down below, you can see that we give even more information based on the type of technology used by the participants. So some proficiency tests might have different methods that are compatible. So in this case, for hexavalent chromium, ultraviolet or UV vis is one of the technologies. And then another technology is ion chromatography with a UV detector. So we give even more information based on the type of technology used. And so laboratories can use this even more granular data to make decisions on methods and technologies that they use in their laboratory. So now that we've talked about proficiency testing, how it works, and what is offered, let's talk about why. Why do people do proficiency testing? So first, let's look at a proficiency test and a certified reference material. So a PT is recognized as an independent third-party evaluation of your laboratory's performance. CRMs, or certified reference materials, are used to evaluate the measurement accuracy of a method, and they can be used on a routine basis. So there are a lot of different reasons why someone would use a certified reference material. Many times we see laboratories use them when they are implementing a new method, or they are looking to troubleshoot a method or an instrument issue. Sometimes they use them for training for a new analyst. They might use them to verify their results. They use them on a routine basis for quality control, or they use them as part of their corrective action process. Both of these are important parts of a quality program. And as you can see, they serve different purposes. Proficiency testing looks at the entire laboratory process, from sample intake to reporting results, and the certified reference material is more for evaluating the analytical process of the method. So proficiency testing for ERA in the US, there is a requirement where a proficiency testing study is 45 days. So you must return your results before the end of that 45-day period. ERA will then evaluate the results compared to all the other participants in that study, and those can be in your same country, they can be all over the world. We then base the evaluation, whether you have acceptable or not acceptable results, based on a Z-score from the study mean. We can report that just to your laboratory, which is most common outside of the US, or we can also report it to your regulatory body of interest, but that's usually just happens in the US. If for some reason your laboratory fails, you might need to do and consider an additional proficiency test after you've really determined what was the cause of the failure. So if we look at the purpose of a PT, I would say the primary purpose is a regulatory purpose. So for example, it is a requirement of ISO 17025 accreditation. If you do not complete the proficiency test, or if you do not receive satisfactory results, there may be some sort of punishment or suspension of a license. So that's why most laboratories today do proficiency testing. However, there are two other components or two other reasons why some laboratories participate in proficiency testing. So one of those is it is a key component of quality improvement and of quality programs. So it is an initial demonstration of a laboratory's capability. So for example, if your laboratory is looking to offer a new test as a service, participating in a proficiency test demonstrates to your clients that your laboratory is capable and competent of this new test. And we also see some companies use proficiency testing as a way to train their analysts or to demonstrate that their analysts are certified in conducting that test. And finally, we often see laboratories use proficiency testing as a way to differentiate their laboratory. So they choose to participate in a proficiency test to demonstrate their consistency over time, or they use proficiency testing to choose which of their sites as part of their business network might specialize in a certain test. And then often we see testing laboratories, especially for contract testing organizations, they will use the data from eData. They will use their trend charts as part of their proposals to clients to demonstrate with data and with objective facts that their laboratory is the right laboratory to choose for that test that needs to be done. So some regulatory agencies have a specified requirement in terms of frequency for proficiency testing. So in the United States, a laboratory must complete and successfully pass 2 out of 3 proficiency tests every single year. I don't know the exact requirements in Peru, but obviously this is something that you are familiar with. And once you conduct that proficiency test, you report your successful results to your regulatory body. You can also use the data from a proficiency test for risk analysis, for root cause analysis, for documentation, and even for method optimization or method deployment. I worked with one company where they had probably about 10 or 15 locations around the world. And so the site that developed the new method wanted to transfer that method to all the different locations. So they did that and then asked each site to participate in a proficiency test for those analytes. And then they compared the results to make sure that the method was transferred successfully and it was an optimized method. So a lot of what we've talked about so far for proficiency tests are studies that are scheduled. So ERA offers over 50 scheduled proficiency testing studies every year. Some of the tests are monthly and offered 12 times per year. Some are quarterly, so they are offered 4 times per year. ERA also offers a proficiency testing product called Quik Response. And essentially, this is a proficiency test that is on demand. That means you can order this proficiency test and complete it whenever is convenient or critical for your laboratory. And the results, once you submit the results to ERA, the results are immediately returned to you, whether you had satisfactory results or unsatisfactory results. So many laboratories will choose to use a Quik Response product to comply and meet deadline-driven corrective action requirements. So if they had a failure from a scheduled PT, once they figure out the root cause of their failure, they will order a Quik Response so they can complete it right away. They do not have to wait for the next scheduled study, nor do they have to wait until the 45-day proficiency testing window has closed and then wait for the results. Some laboratories will use a Quik Response to expand their scope of accreditation for 17025. So if they want to bring on a new testing service, they will complete a Quik Response so they can quickly add that test to their scope. And they will use it also to document and validate the effectiveness of their corrective action procedures. So there's a lot of different reasons why somebody would choose to use a Quik Response. Now, I sometimes get the question, is a Quik Response really a proficiency test? So to answer that question, let's look to the ISO standards. So first, we will look at 17025, the ISO standard. And if we look at section 7.71 specifically, this is where it talks about ensuring the validity of your results. and it says the laboratory shall have a procedure for monitoring the validity of results. The resulting data shall be recorded in a way that trends are detectable and where practical, statistical techniques shall be applied. And it offers some different options. If you look at the bottom, option J or option K are an intra-laboratory comparison or the testing of a blind sample. And a quick response is a blind sample. We send it to you just as we would send another proficiency testing product. You do not know the concentration. And a quick response is actually a proficiency testing sample that we created as part of one of our standard studies. That product has gone through the scheduled proficiency test where participants around the world have analyzed it and then submitted their results, and all of that data is now associated with that product, which actually we now offer as a certified reference material. So when you or your laboratory call for a quick response, we look through our records and look for a certified reference material lot that your laboratory has never ordered and never seen the results. So that sample is blind. And because it has already gone through a proficiency testing study, it has already been through an interlab comparison. So when we send it to your laboratory and you test it, your results are compared against everyone else who tested that sample as part of the regular proficiency testing study. So yes, it is an interlab comparison. So now let's look at what the ISO 17043 standard. And if you remember, this standard is about the requirements for a proficiency testing provider. So section 3.4, an interlab comparison is the organization, performance, and evaluation of measurements or tests on the same or similar items by two or more laboratories in accordance with predetermined conditions. That quick response study sample that we sent has already gone through a proficiency testing study that has been analyzed by more than two laboratories. Now we look at section 3.7, and here it requires a proficiency for proficiency testing is the evaluation of participant performance against pre-established criteria by means of intra-laboratory comparisons. Your results on that quick response are compared against the study mean from the original study, from the original participants. And that is how your Z-score is generated. So to answer the question, do quick response products qualify in the eyes of the ISO 17043 proficiency testing requirements? And the answer is yes. And we conduct quick response PTs all over the world in more than 80 countries every year, and they're accepted by the regulatory bodies. If you need more information on this, please feel free to reach out to me at a later time. So the last thing I want to talk about today are some of the recent changes to the new ISO standard versions. And specifically, we will look at ISO 17025 2017E, and then 17034, the 2016 version E. We'll talk about what some of the changes are and what does that mean for you as an analytical testing lab, and what does it mean for ERA as a reference material provider. So first, I drew this image here, trying to relate all the different ISO standards and how they relate to one another with regards to proficiency testing, analytical competence of testing labs, and metrological traceability. So I will not spend a lot of time here, but we have talked about today 17025, 17043, which is our guiding standard for PT providers, and then 17034, which is a reference material guidance or standard. And then you can see all the other standards that are relate to these standards. So again, this is just for your information today. So let's look at 17025 first. The new version really, compared to the old version, adopted a more risk-based approach. And it requires reference material providers to formally assess and address risk on an ongoing basis. That is our requirement. The language is more forceful, and it closed some loopholes or some opportunities for evasion of the requirements. It requires the use of statistical methods to monitor trends, stability, and method uncertainties, which I'm sure you've had to do in your laboratory. It also requires the strict use of certified reference materials versus reference materials for calibrants. So again, this is an important thing for your laboratory as you look to choose what you calibrate your instruments with. They should be certified reference materials. So we talked about the first one. If you are looking to trend results and stability or data method uncertainties over time, eData is a great tool to do that with. And then one of the things, again, if it's more of a risk-based approach, we see a lot of laboratories who run daily QC checks as a way to mitigate risk in their laboratory. It gives them the confidence that once they get successful results for their QC check, that their instrument and their method is operating properly before they run customer samples. So now, finally, if we look at the 17034 new version, and again, this is the general requirements for a reference material provider. This switched from the Guide 34 to the standard, to the ISO standard 17034. So now the language in this new standard is much more enforceable. And what I mean, as an example, in the ISO Guide 34, it said a reference material provider should do this. In the new standard, it says the reference material provider shall. So it is more enforceable and it's more of an order. There is better clarity now on the definition between a certified reference material versus a reference material or a standard. There is additional emphasis and requirements for material testing and confirmation and homogeneity testing. Also, there are additional requirements for stability testing, and we must provide this additional information to the users of these certified reference materials. So it is much more now a defined term, certified reference material. Different providers can't create their own definition. Also, all of this additional testing and characterization leads to a higher quality product. It also means that we, as the provider of reference materials, must do a lot more testing. So it's a lot more work for us, but it leads to a better characterized standard for use in your laboratories. There's also very specific language that's required on the certificate of analysis, and we must be compliant and also explain. So you will see all the definitions on ERA's certificate of analyses for our CRM products. And it's really making sure that we also control how that product, that CRM, arrives at your laboratory. So that means that when we work with our partners, such as Sulabsa, we make sure they are aware of the requirements of that certified reference material so they can ensure that it arrives at your laboratory with its integrity and stability intact. So as a summary of our time today, again, ERA and Sulabsa, we want to be your partner in quality. We have a long working relationship, over 10 years together, and our goal is to be your provider of high quality proficiency testing products. We have a high number of studies, so high frequency. We have a high number of participants in each study, which means, and to you, more validity of the results. We also try to provide the flexibility so you can choose when you want to participate in a proficiency test and make sure it is convenient for your laboratory. And if you need immediate results, there is the quick response option. As we talked about why people do proficiency testing, it is a regulatory requirement, but high quality labs also use it as a tool as part of their quality management program. And finally, we looked a little bit at some of the changes in the ISO standards and what that means for you as a testing lab and for ERA as a proficiency testing provider and a provider of certified reference materials. And again, our other final goal is really to make sure that we provide to you local support, our deep technical expertise, and together we do that with Sulabsa in Peru. So again, congratulations to Sulabsa. And I want to say thank you very much and muchas gracias. Thank you.